If you're writing something longer than flash fiction or a very, very short story, you're going to have to deal with more than just one plot. It can't just be about someone breaking into your house anymore. Now it's also about why that character breaks into the house in the first place and how the experience changes the character or changes the people in the house. Or maybe it's about the question of where that damned PlayStation set is hidden at. Suddenly there are a lot more balls to juggle than you expected going into the story, and that can become a bit daunting, especially when writing long stories, which inevitably gather more balls along the way. Today I'm going to use the MICE Quotient to figure out how to deal with all of that. Hi, I'm Inka and I'm currently writing a cosmic horror story called MSV Shelter and make videos about the progress. In June and July I'm doing a deep dive into outlining to be prepared for the second draft and the whole editing process. And today we're going to talk about major and minor plot threads.
Can I see you tomorrow night?
Sure. But don't you mean tonight?
The MICE Quotient is an organizational theory that not only distinguishes between plot threads, but will become more important in the next video when it also helps us figure out the order of introducing and closing these threads. I heard about it first on the Writing Excuses podcast, and Mary Robinette Cowell might not have invented it, but she's kind of an expert on this, so I'm going to let her explain what the MICE Quotient is all about.
So stories are made of these four elements, and they're mixed in different proportions: milieu, inquiries, characters, and events. And these elements can help determine where a story starts and stops and the kinds of conflicts your characters face. Milieu stories are driven by place. These stories begin when a character enters a place and they end when they exit. So things like Gulliver's Travels, Around the World in 80 Days are classic examples. The neat thing is that if you know where the milieu story ends, this also tells you what sort of conflicts go in the middle, because your job as an author is to figure out what your story needs to do and then systematically deny them the solution. That means that the conflicts are all about keeping the character from leaving. So these are things like struggling to exit, trying to survive in, attempting to navigate. Inquiry stories are driven by questions. They begin when a character has a question, and they end when they answer it. It's a super complicated structure. So mystery stories, classic inquiry stories like Sherlock Holmes, Poirot. For an inquiry conflict, your goal is to keep your character from answering the question. They're lied to, they can't understand the answers lead to dead ends, so many red herrings. Those are inquiry conflicts. Character stories are pretty much driven by angst. In the simplest form, they begin when a character is unhappy, they end when they are happy, and they begin with this shift in identity, this self-identity, and they end when that character solidifies their self-definition. So coming-of-age stories, romances. Event stories are driven by action. These begin when the status quo is disrupted, so when normal breaks, and they end when it's restored or there's a new status quo.
The MICE Quotient can become quite dangerous for me to use because I get a bit perfectionistic about it, and when you drill too deeply, this model can't work. But it's great if you don't get too hung up on it and just use it as a vague direction to go in. So I'm not going to completely detangle my story and find every little thread, but only focus on the big ones that I can immediately think of. For every major plot thread of mine, I don't just want to establish the MICE Quotient, but also figure out a specific goal, establish stakes for what happens if they fail to reach that goal, and find the main source of conflict and conflict solutions. For me, those would be first the mission, which is a milieu story. It's about getting into and navigating the Undercity of Babel. The goal is to find the missing squadron and get out of Babylonia before the environment turns them into mutants. The dangers come from the environment, the mutants that live there, the structure that is falling apart, and just the simple act of navigating an unknown and ruined Undercity. Second, the romance between Necro and Cheek, which is two character stories intermingling. Third, we have the mutation, which is an event story. It's about stopping the mutating or slowing it down long enough for them to be able to return home mostly remaining human. Plot threads 4, 5, 6 and 7 are all character stories for the supporting cast, because I'm turning MSV Shelter into an ensemble story, and the bad guy also, of course, needs a character arc. 8th is about the MSV Shelter itself, which is the name of the submarine they are on. It's again a milieu story about how it starts to corrode over the story and gets attacked, and it's just about trying to keep it alive. So we've got 8 major plot threads, which isn't too bad. J.K. Rowling in the Order of Phoenix had at least 7. I already started doing this with the romance in my video on characters and relationships, where I plotted out the relationship on chapter index cards. I love working in chapters instead of going through the whole story all at once, because it's just easier to take it on in smaller chunks. And this way, each chapter can have its own smaller theme or setting or situation which the other threads all tie into. I'm going to fill out the chapter index cards for all the other plot threads now. I'm just going through everything that happens with bullet points. I'm not going to strictly stick to the try-fail cycle that Mary Robinette Kowal kind of hinted at, where you set up a goal like the character wants to get that door open, and then the scene ends with a yes, they get the door open, but the corridor behind it is barricaded, or no, they don't get the door open and now the walls are closing in on them. This is also called the yes but ... and no and ... which keeps repeating almost every scene until you reach the midpoint and have to start closing out the threads by saying yes and ... or no and ... I'm not going to use that here, because the plan is to thread all these plot threads back together again, and to do so seamlessly, sometimes a milieu plot needs to be finished up with a character arc or vice versa. But I am of course trying to find a certain cause and effect while writing down these bullet points. As an example, I'm going to start with the milieu story. Groan feels something approaching, but Necro can't see anything. The bioluminescence darkens the deep waters even further. The ocean behind the light pitch black and endless. Cheek and Poet dive back into the water while Pill stays on lookout. He starts talking in that strange tongue again, his eyes gliding up the water to the north like he's searching for something. Cheek and Poet check out the Undercity, even brighter and livelier than outside the wall. Cheek is giddy as he takes in the coordinates of Poet. He always wanted to come down here. Poet asks him why he didn't. He has a diving set after all, and Cheek says that of course he's not going to come down here all by himself. Why not? Pill stands up, still mumbling, his eyes on the water. Because of the Gigi, of course. What are the Gigi? Necro yells at Pill to stay in the boat, but he doesn't listen and jumps into the water. He dives. Necro tells them to go after him, and they do. They call for Pill until they see him, with his back turned to them. He's looking down while shadows crawl up all around them. Necro, Cheek and Poet follow his gaze and first see nothing but the pitch black, but then teeth. Rows of teeth like the levels of hell. And tentacles worming their way up the walls, tentacles shiny and stiff like spools of wire. Poet yells out for Pill as the wire slowly starts worming its way around him. Poet swims towards Pill, yelling at Cheek to help him. Necro orders him to do the same, but Cheek says no way in hell and starts swimming the other way. And on it goes, as you can see, very loose and train of thought like. This is just to figure out parts of the story in isolation. Of course, though, like I said, it's truly impossible to detangle each thread, as you can see. There are multiple other threads playing part in here as well, but the main focus is the milieu story. Going through these milieu plot threads made it very clear that I need to split up the first chapter into 2. I knew that in my heart already, but I couldn't because I was stuck with the 1 chapter Necro, 1 chapter Cheek structure, which I thankfully am no longer confined in since the last video. Those are the major plot threads, but what about the little ones? You often only find out about these after finishing your first draft. Maybe you put something at the very end and think that you need to foreshadow this at some point. On the Writing Excuses podcast, again, I know my research is like 80% just blabbing after them. They talk about having to foreshadow something 3 times before paying it off. By repeating something, you tell your reader to Pay attention, this is going to be important later. I think 4 times is a bit of an odd number because I always think in threes. Setup, reminder, payoff. But in the Writing Excuses podcast, I trust, so I'm going to make a spreadsheet with every minor plot thread I can think of and brainstorm a setup, reminder 1, reminder 2, and a payoff for each. For now, I have about 11 of them, each for another smaller cast member. And of course, the genius that I am, I planned on doing all of that. The 8 major plot threads and the 11 minor ones in 1 week. Ha 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 ha. Bad. Scheduling. An absolutely moronic move, but I did it. Ha! What I lack in intelligence, I make up with in pure vigor. I have finally transitioned from the smart one in class, who never learned how to study, to the dumb but determined one. My character arc is complete. Or is it? Because I'm recording this on Wednesday and I haven't even finished the milieu plot thread yet. And you, editing Inka, have to actually have done all of it by this Sunday or the video is fucked. I'm going to show you now how many % of the plot thread I have actually managed to do right now. Don't you dare cut this out, you coward. Okay, so it is 3 p.m. on Sunday and I had planned to work on the threads a little longer, but I'm noticing my standards are starting to slip, and if I just go with the first idea that comes to mind, like, what does any of this even matter? So I'm going to stop and try to finish it up tomorrow. I also want to add that I have worked on this for 24 hours this week, okay? So give me a break. Here's the proof. As I said in the last video, I have kept on scheduling my stuff, so that really helped and I'm going to keep doing that, and it's actually a lot of fun. So I finished the mission. I split up the romance into Necro and Cheek, and yeah, they're mostly finished. As you can see, my major plot threads have shrunken quite a bit. The MSV shelter, I think I struck out completely because I have put everything I wanted to put into MSV shelter into the mission thread, and everything else I put into minor plot threads. And as you can see, I have done away with the spreadsheet because it just was very unhandlich. It wasn't very easy to navigate. So I have finished the spider minor plot thread. The Fleischer minor plot thread is mostly finished. Groan is also mostly finished. Pill is finished because he's like the first guy to die, so I need to know what's going on with him. Mael is also finished and I'm very happy with his arc. I have done with him everything I wanted to do. Grow C was also difficult, like in the first he's like the secondary antagonist, and he had such an underwhelming death, and I have fixed that. And yeah, I still have so many more to go, like Prick and Ammo and Pink Eye and Pac-Man and Teeth probably won't get too much. Earpods on as well. They won't get too much. For them, it's probably only going to be like the 4 scenes that I had planned. So I don't know how many % that is, but I'm happy with it, especially with the mission plot thread. It cleared up quite a bit, and as you might have seen, the chapters have changed. It used to be only 12 chapters, and now it's 17. That doesn't mean that I have added a lot more story, but that I just spliced the chapters into smaller chunks. And now I'm going to enjoy my Sunday and just maybe take a bit of a break before I have to start writing the second draft tomorrow and obviously finish up this one. Yeah, I'm just going to take a break now, if that's alright. Making a YouTube channel was a great idea. Now, we finished level 5 of the outlining process. Hopefully. If you feel ready and excited to start your first draft, off you go. I'm going on to level 6, where I'm going to take all these threads and weave them together into a composite outline. And you can catch me there next Sunday. Bye!